You're listening to ABC Radio, Alberta's Bigfoot channel, where we've got Sasquatch stories, Bigfoot breakdowns, 8-man anecdotes, and even hominid homilies. I'm your host, Gunnar Fredericks, and today we're joined by Bigfoot researcher and host of the Wrestling with Bigfoot podcast, Chase Callahan. Thanks for coming on to the show today, Chase.
Thanks for having me on the show, Gunnar Fredericks. It's great to be back. ABC Radio, what's it been? About a 5 to 6 year hiatus for this show. People have been demanding another episode, and here we are. Let's talk Squatch.
We're back, baby. To be honest with you folks, today's episode is more like an extended teaser. The topic of 8 men around the world. It's so long and varied that we couldn't possibly discuss everything in a single episode. So today we're going to focus on the different varieties of reported 8 men and then build up further stories from there. We'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Dr. Higginbotham's Sasquatch Repellent. It's a viscous oil with a scent described as skunk spray, overripe watermelons, and hot clams, guaranteed to repel any unwanted hominids in your vicinity. Thank you, Dr. Higginbotham's Sasquatch Repellent. For anyone else who wants to support us, please visit the Patreon. I'll link that in the show notes. But first, what is the Global 8-Man Network? Did I just make it up? Or are humanoid hominids joining forces? Find out on today's episode of ABC Radio. So, Bigfoot exists in a world that is referred to
Bigfoot
as
exists in
cryptid and cryptozoology. What is cryptozoology? Cryptozoology is a pseudoscience and subculture that searches for and studies unknown, legendary, or extinct animals, whose presence or existence is disputed or unsubstantiated, particularly those popular in folklore, such as Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, Yeti, Chupacabra, the Jersey Devil, and the Mokele Mbembe. These creatures are referred to as cryptids. Our focus on this episode will be on the different types of 8 men, and we're going to begin with some of the most popular cryptids and then move on to the more obscure creatures. Now, being Albertan, I think it's important for us to mention that Alberta's Bigfoot capital is Nordegg, with several sightings over the years. For those who camp in the area, you'll be familiar with the rugged terrain, thick forests, beautiful mountains. That whole region is dotted with mining and logging activity. I've camped there a few times and never personally had any strange encounters, but I'm not ready to discredit the other sightings in Alberta and British Columbia. One fun thing, though, is that for a while, Google Maps had a Bigfoot sighting overlay, and you could actually see several sightings clustered along the edge of Alberta's Rocky Mountains going into British Columbia. Chase, have you been to Nordegg?
I've been to Nordegg. I was just recently in Nordegg with my wife. I want to say about a month ago, we stopped in at that little diner that they have there. Ordered some
Miners Cafe.
Yeah, the Miners Cafe. We ordered some overpriced chicken Caesar wraps, which were, memorable to say the least. I was able to pick up 2 Bigfoot stuffed animals, a female and a male. So that's how I got my wife to go out there with me. And like you were saying, the country out there is rugged. It's beautiful. We didn't get any hiking done, but we stopped in at the local cemetery. And it's so weird that a place that holds, obviously, the dead. It was probably one of the most peaceful places I've been in a while. But just to jump in on your definition of cryptozoology, of course, that was coined by cryptozoologist John E. Wall, and it is derived from the Greek word meaning of kryptos, which means hidden. So again, that categorizes anything from Loch Ness Monster to what we're talking about, Sasquatch. Let's get into it, baby.
Now, the crazy thing about Sasquatch, if we're going to touch on their habitat for a minute, it always seems to be in very densely wooded areas, but you would think there'd be more sightings along the coast. Washington, Oregon, southern mainland British Columbia, that's where some of the thickest, most rugged forests are. But something that we talked about before the show is whether climate change could actually affect the range of a Bigfoot. If they're a naturally occurring creature, most creatures, humans being the exception, are limited to a certain range. You're not going to find snakes in Antarctica. You're not going to find penguins in, like, Italy. There are just certain things you don't expect. So I'm not sure what a Bigfoot's natural range is, but Bigfoot is not the only ape man we have. We actually found a list of some of the most common ape men, starting off with one called the Almas. It has a whole bunch of names. You might know it as the Abnauyu, the Almasti, Albasti, Bekbok, Biabanguli. There are a tremendous amount of names. It's referred to as some type of non-human ape or hominid. Apparently, it lives in the Caucasus Mountain area. Many people refer to it as a creature of folklore. Its name appears to have come from Mongolian or Turkic languages. And it's described as a creature with a flat face like a human being that often walked on two legs. Its body was covered in thick black fur, and its feet were armed with enormous claws. Its strength was terrible, and not only were hunters afraid of attacking it, but the inhabitants removed their habitations from those parts of the country which it visited. I've never had the privilege of visiting the Caucasus Mountains. I know it's very rugged terrain. I know some very tough people come out of that area. In science, a Soviet scientist actually proposed that the Almasti, another name for the Almas, could be a relict population of Neanderthals still living in Siberia. A group of scientists in 1992 went on an expedition to search for the Almas in the Caucasus Mountains. It appears that the results were inconclusive, and a 2014 study concluded that hair samples attributed to the Almas were from species such as Ursus arctos, the brown bear, Equus caballos, the horse, and Bos taurus, the cow. So it appears that the Almas doesn't really have a whole lot going for it except for a long tradition in folklore. Moving on to the Amomongo, also known as the Orang Mawas, or the Impacta. It apparently lives in or lived in the Philippines. This one's a little weird to me. How do I put it? My internal BS meter is kind of going off when they say that they found something in 2008 and it attacked somebody and disemboweled numerous goats and chickens. Now, I know that the Philippines isn't exactly a first world country, but you'd think somebody would have
Beautiful
at least
country.
some beautiful area, and
Yeah.
I really want to scuba dive it. But you would think even in 2008 somebody would have some kind of camera if a large ape man was in your farm disemboweling your goats. There's not nearly as much in the record for the Amamongo. It's a very short, some very short entries here. There's not a lot to really work on there. The native community in the Philippines holds that it's a wild animal and not an intelligent being.
What's the size on this guy?
That one was described as fairly small. I believe it said a hairy white ape with long sharp nails, and it stood 5 feet 4 inches tall.
Okay, so that to me, that is more on the side of like you were touching base on, like a Neanderthal or a wild man or something like that, especially out in the Philippines where, you know, fishing is prominent. They got a lot of vast landscapes in the Philippines. Tiny island, you think if there's something there, they'd be able to find it by now, for sure.
Well, because there are so many little islands
Yeah.
that it should be not too difficult to just quadrant off each island, do a quick sweep. I feel like the government would want to know if there were giant ape men roaming around alongside
sure.
their population.
Especially in the Philippines, man, a place like that. If that were me and I was the government, I'd 100% be doing something like that. Think of the tourism that would come there. That's a lot of money in the Philippines right there. They already say mermaids live there. Why not throw the wild man in on it?
And they describe it as a 5'4" hairy ape, and the average height in the Philippines is also not very tall. So picture if you were going out for a walk and, you know, like a 5'9" or 6 foot tall ape was just walking through the forest with you. Even if it's the same size as me, that's too big. I already don't trust chimpanzees.
Oh, no. Chimpanzees, I don't have any time of the day for unless they're behind a cage, that's for sure. It's funny, you know, we're talking about the Philippines. Of course, my job, I do work in the school board. I work with a lot of Filipino people, and one of the things that always gets to me is how they come up to me and they say how tall I am, and I'm literally like 5'11", and they all want me on the basketball team. and to me, I get a kick out of that. You're so tall. I'm not.
You're like, thank you.
I'm normal.
Man. It's so crazy. Another thing I don't understand, just touching back on the Almas for a second, where they thought it might have been a relic Neanderthal population. Just touching on the height thing as well. Neanderthals were described as shorter than Homo sapiens generally.
Yeah.
So how come whenever they try and describe a giant ape creature, so many people think Neanderthals? They were shorter, stockier, human-like things. They were...
Yeah.
I mean, some of us still apparently carry Neanderthal DNA. I think they believe it's like, in parts of Europe, it's anywhere from 1 to 3% Neanderthal DNA. So they still kind of live on with us, but they weren't giant. They were fairly small, like 5'6", 5'5".
I'm definitely feeling that 3%. But I know you were talking on the Almas, and what's funny is there's actually a legendary Bigfoot researcher by the name of Al Nasty, which I thought was kind of like a funny little coincidence there. He got his
real
start.
name.
Yeah, Al Nasty. He got his start in the 1990s and early 2000s. But of course, he was known for his unconventional and sometimes controversial methods, which included using audio recordings and other techniques to try and communicate with the creature. So an example, he's out there, he's one of the guys that would bring out recordings, the Sierra sounds, and he would blast them at like full volume to try and lure out creatures. So yeah, I don't know if that's the way you want to do it. Seems a little disrespectful when you should be treating this in a very respectful way, especially if you're thinking this thing's 8 to 9 feet tall. I know the one we're talking about is on the smaller side, but...
You don't want to make it mad.
No, especially a wild man or something feral. Like you bring up chimpanzees, and who knows if this 5'4" little guy's running around and you know, ripping goats and things apart. Those are some sharp claws, man. You try to get in there with your hands and fingers right now, I'm sorry, but unless you're Freddy Krueger, you ain't doing it.
Have you ever seen that picture of the hairless chimp?
I have, and it's
how
scary.
Insanely jacked it is.
They
don't need
man,
to be as tall as us to just rip our thumbs off. Freaky
I heard the story of the lady. You know, it was one of the chimp's birthdays, and she brought just one chimpanzee a piece of birthday cake, and all the other chimpanzees organized an Alcatraz-like breakout and just ripped her apart. Kept her alive, but ripped her apart. Because that's what they do. They don't go for the kill. It's like you said, they rip off your fingers, your toes, and, you know, I don't know how deep we can get into it, but yeah, they just disfigure you, man. Chimpanzees, like I said, I have no desire to go look at wild chimpanzees ever.
For anyone who is less squeamish, just go look up chimp attacks. It's nightmarish.
And for those of you that are, don't look it up.
Well, watch something nicer, like cat
kitten videos. Yeah, cat or kitten. You can't go wrong with that.
Moving on to the next ape, man, we've got the Barmanu, also known as the big hairy one. Allegedly lives in the Middle East or Asia. Now, for me, this is a new creature. I hadn't heard of this one before I started researching this episode. It apparently inhabits the mountainous region of northern Pakistan, which honestly would be a great place for it because not a lot of explorers are going up there. And the people that live up there, they already have a long tradition of folklore and kind of keeping to themselves. Shepherds living in the mountains have reported sightings. They view it as like a Pakistani equivalent of the Bigfoot. The proposed range covers the Chitral and Karakoram ranges, which are both very mountainous areas. It's kind of in the Kashmir region. It spans the border of Pakistan, China, and India. So basically, picture the Himalayan mountains just on the Pakistani side of the border.
Yeah, I was going to do exactly what you did there, describe what it looked like to me, and yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. It's
just, you know what? We're going to be giving you guys a lot of homework, but look up Karakoram, Karakoram. Look up that mountain range because it is just beautiful. And apparently that's the home of the Barmanu. It allegedly possesses both human and ape-like characteristics and has a reputation for abducting women and attempting to mate with them. Oh, God. All right. That's not the direction I saw this article going.
Yeah, no. That took a sharp left turn. But to be fair... you know what I mean?
I mean, like... any port in a storm, I guess. It's also reported to wear animal skins upon its back and head, so that would show some signs of intelligence, because there are very few other animals that are known to wear other animals upon their body. You've got, like, what are they, the boxer crabs that wear the anemones on their claws.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking
Every
about
once
there.
in a while, you'll see something where there'll be, like, two animals with a kind of mutualist relationship. I believe that's what it's called. But just wearing the skins, I don't know if that's been found in the wild anywhere else. The first search for this bipedal humanoid was carried out by a Spanish zoologist living in France, Jordi Magraner, from 1987 to 1990. He wrote a paper about the Pakistani cryptid, also known as the wild man. He later researched it extensively in the 1990s, but was murdered in Afghanistan in 2002. Jesus, all right, this is quite an intense... My God, the amount of... I wonder how many people have died looking for this thing, because that's a tough part of the world.
I feel like this is going to be its own episode. Like, this is dark side of the ring material right here. We just opened the page, and some of the stuff that we're reading right now is absolutely mind-boggling. The fact that you got to wonder, was this guy onto something? Did he find something? Why was he murdered?
Man, it's dark. I mean, when we think about squatching, finger quotes, in North America, we at least have a reasonable feeling of safety.
Yeah.
Like, the main issues are just maybe bears and weather.
If we're out in Nordegg and I'm not promoting guns or whatever, but if you're going to be doing something like this, you're definitely you're going to feel safer if you have a firearm or someone who knows how to operate a firearm. That would be the only thing that I would truly want for a safety net if I were to go out there, and I feel like I would feel 100% A-okay.
Moving on to one of our favorites, Bigfoot, aka Sasquatch. It ranges throughout all of the United States and Canada, but it's particularly common, at least it's particularly sighted in the Pacific Northwest, so we're going to count Alberta's mountain ranges, lower mainland, BC, Washington, Oregon, maybe a bit of Idaho, maybe even stretching into Montana, but it seems to really be popular in that kind of coastal rainforest region. Bigfoot is such a popular part of our folklore in North America. Chase has his social distancing world champion Bigfoot shirt. I've got my Canadian Zodiac Sasquatch shirt.
Oh yeah, baby, looking good. If you could only see us now. Not to jump in, but it's like you're talking about the northern, the coast there, and of course Northern California. A man by the name of Jerry Crew was the first person to come forward in 1958, on August 27th, 1958, to get the date correct, where he discovered a series of large human-like footprints in the mud near Bluff Creek. Of course, Bluff Creek, where that Patterson video was shot later on in the 60s. So, and one thing that I want to touch on too before I pass the mic back to my partner here, in Northern California, everything's bigger out there. So the trees are bigger, their bears are bigger, and of course the Sasquatch that are reported are also, a lot of these things are touching 9 to even 10 to 11 feet tall. So that is one hell of a diet for an 11-foot tall humanoid being. What would something like that eat? You got to think grizzly bears are a thing. They got to, copy a diet of a grizzly bear if I were to look at it.
Something omnivorous. If it's coastal, it has access to a lot of protein if it's there during the salmon run.
Oh, 100%. Berries in the fall.
Yeah.
You load up on berries. People have shown in this day and age, not to poke fun at them, but there's a lot of people out there that have switched to an all-vegan diet, and they're, they're going strong. I'm a big fan of wrestling. There's a lot of wrestlers out there that are big and jacked that get their protein through other ways. So I'm not saying that Bigfoot is a vegan. I'm just saying if you're on a vegan-type diet, if you're eating the right things, it's easy enough to survive out there.
I wouldn't say it's impossible, because gorillas get pretty big and they're 100% vegan.
Yeah.
They're all herbivorous.
Yeah.
Elephants, like there are a lot of large vegan animals out there. In terms of like diets, humans and chimps were omnivorous. Orangutans, I'm pretty sure, are herbivorous. Gorillas are herbivorous. So Sasquatch could go either way. Like, it has options.
I think I'd have time for orangutans. They seem pretty cool.
They seem chill.
They seem really cool. Like, they just seem fluffy, and I like orangutans. Chimpanzees, not a chance.
They freak me out.
They really do, and I'm sorry, chimps, but you freak us out.
So for anyone that's not familiar, first off, wow. But Bigfoot, it's often described as a large, muscular, bipedal human or ape-like creature covered in black, dark brown, or dark reddish hair. Some descriptions have the animal, or I don't even know if I should say animal, it feels weird, but describe the creature as anywhere from 6 to 9 feet tall. Some have stretched that to 10 to 15 feet, which would be
15 feet
shocking.
Is huge.
That's taller than the first story of your house.
Yeah, that's a little too big for me.
In 1971, in the Dalles, Oregon, a police report described an overgrown ape. One of the men claimed to have sighted it in the scope of his rifle, but could not bring himself to shoot it because it looked more human than animal. There are a lot of different examples of Bigfoot in folklore. Chase touched on the Patterson film. For anyone that's not familiar with it, the Patterson-Gimlin film was an American short motion picture of an unidentified subject that filmmakers have said was a Bigfoot. The footage was shot in 1967 in Northern California, and there have been many attempts to authenticate or debunk it. As far as I know, the balance of probabilities still lean towards the video being legit. I guess we could dive into that video right now where we're on the Bigfoot topic. It was filmed at Bluff Creek.
Yes.
And the people that say this was an authentic video describe the fact that the gait of the creature looked very natural, not like a person in a costume. When they analyzed the footage even closer, they saw that this Bigfoot-type creature had visible breasts under the fur.
100%.
Which would have been an interesting detail for like a 1960s costume manufacturer to include.
100% agree with that.
And when they analyzed the feet, I believe there was a foot deformity you talked about?
There was a hemorrhage on the right, I'd call it quadricep area, where if you zoom in, you could see this hemorrhage almost bubbling up. So just imagine like a fist over your quadricep, and every time you step, it's going from your knee all the way up to where your hip would be, and every step you see it going up and down. So that would be one of the arguments that I would use to say that it's real. I have 3 arguments. The second one would be, like my partner touched base on, would be the breast. And the third, if you go back and you watch that video when the Sasquatch, when Patty it's dubbed as, turns and looks at Gimlin, it turns with its whole body. And what are the arguments used with primates, chimpanzees, apes? Their neck is so low to their shoulders that when they turn, they can't just turn right to left like you and I do before we, cross the street. Their chin gets locked in with their shoulders, and it has to make a full right or left turn to look. And that's what it does. You can see it looks to the right and its whole body sways, and that's where you see in all of its beauty the National Geographic like breasts.
And I forget if it was that video or another thing, but there have been casts taken of Bigfoot feet.
Yeah.
And they would find something called a mid-tarsal break. Now, for anyone that's not super familiar with the foot anatomy, sorry, I'm going to be talking with my hands a lot, but you've got your heel, you've got the arch of your foot, the ball of your foot, and the toes. When we walk, the majority of the bending for us is either in the ankle or in the ball of the foot. So depending on if we're walking barefoot or not, maybe we're putting more pressure on the ball of the foot, maybe we're striking with the heel and rolling forwards. With some of the Bigfoot casts, they have found something called a mid-tarsal break. So picture while you're walking, if the middle of your arch was the part of your foot that was bending. That would be another thing where, why would they put something like that, such a unique structure in a faked cast of a print? I don't know if there are other creatures out there that have mid-tarsal breaks, if chimps or gorillas have mid-tarsal breaks.
And to piggyback off that too, we want to talk about the footprints left behind. You look at the dermal ridges along the foot as well. So if you go outside and you step barefoot in sand or mud and you cast that print, you'll see exactly like your fingerprints. It leaves all these little ridges on the side. And everyone out there has a unique footprint, which is, it's your own footprint. It's your unique footprint. A lot of murders these days are actually solved because of that. It's right up there with the fingerprint. So that's how a lot of these fake casts are dismissed. You look at a guy like Dr. Jeff Meldrum, who, specializes in foot anatomy, and that's his big argument. He's been... an example, Les Strout, Survivor Man, brought him 3 or 4 different castings. One, which was right away proven to be a grizzly bear that stepped into its own track to make it look like a Sasquatch print. A lot of people are distracted by that, or not distracted. They're, confused as to what they're actually seeing. Another one was a fake. You just put on the costume footprints and you leave that flat print. Yeah. But there was one that Les casted out in the Radium area, another hot spot in Canada where Alberta meets BC. Yeah. And that one, he couldn't disprove. Like, he was saying that one looks legit, and it's because of, like you said, there's that mid-torso break, and it's got the dermal ridges. Things that in the 1960s, people just aren't thinking about it. They're just not.
That would have been probably the most advanced fake foot of all time.
100%. You look at something... All my Maple Leaf fans will love this because 67 was your last cup win. But you look at like even the hockey equipment and stuff that was used back then. They're basically using 2x4s for hockey sticks. So if the technology for the actual PPE and the equipment that you're using isn't up to par, I just don't see someone sitting in their in their garage and they got their feet up and they're like, oh no, we need to add these ridges and the break. To me, that sort of thing doesn't make sense. It just doesn't.
And I did just look it up quickly. Non-human primates have a mid-tarsal break, but humans do not. So if Bigfoot were to have that mid-tarsal break, that would definitely separate it from the rest of us.
And again, that makes sense because when you look at like how Jeff Meldrum was speaking on us, like when we use, when we walk around, we walk apparently just very inconveniently, I want to say. We do not walk in a good way. Like, we take it out on our ankles and stuff like that. And one of the things with the Patterson film, again, I guess this would be a fourth argument, when they went back and they tried to recreate it, the guy was basically, now, I want you to get on a straight hallway or sidewalk, and when you're walking, like, kick your feet out and your knees, like, to the outside of your body as wide as you can by still walking forward. And apparently that's how these things walk. They use their whole hips, knees, calves, all their muscles. They're all used, where we, for some reason, walk very generic and robot-like. Almost like it's an inconvenience for us to walk. Like, it's weird when you think of that.
Somehow we turned that weird walking style into a superpower, because if you put us in a marathon with any other creature, we're going to win with our awkward running style.
Oh, 100%. We got the shoes to do it.
We could go on Bigfoot for the rest of the episode, but we are here to run through the whole list of 8 men to give everyone a little teaser for what's to come. So we move on to the Bukit Timah Monkey Man.
Wow.
Which is a forest-dwelling hominid or other primate from Singapore. This one was apparently first described in 1805. That's said to be a hominid-like, grayish in color creature, about 5'9", so about my height, with a bipedal gait. All sightings have been centered upon the Bukit Timah region. Now, Singapore is not very large.
Now, what do you mean by bipedal gait when you say that?
So, there are very few creatures out there that walk upright on 2 legs.
Okay.
There are some birds. There are some primates that do it sometimes. And every once in a while, bears can even rear up on their back legs and walk on two legs.
Okay.
I don't know if there are any other creatures that walk bipedally generally other than humans and birds.
So bipedal gait is just by definition that
Walking upright.
Walking on 2 feet. Okay, walking upright. Okay, perfect.
Sightings of this monkey man are pretty rare. First report came in 1805 when a Malay, anyone from like that ethnic Malaysian group, claimed to have seen an upright walking monkey-faced creature in the Bukit Timah area. Japanese soldiers also reported sightings of the creature during World War II. For me, that lends it a bit more credence because what would the soldiers gain from saying, by the way, the place we're trying to invade also has monkey men?
Oh, I totally agree. You know, and we'll touch base on it, maybe not today, but in another episode. I do have a friend whose father was in the Vietnam War, and he actually, I talked to him about some of the mountain men out there, and his theories out there they're pretty outlandish. So we'll save that for another episode. Just a little bit of a tease, but we do got some stuff down the pipeline.
There were sightings as well in 2007, 2008, and even as recently as 2020 when the Bukit Timah monkey man was allegedly spotted by a night hiker, an event which was covered extensively in local media reports. Now,
a night hiker, wow, you gotta have balls of steel to be walking around that area at night.
Like, I've done night hikes out here, but again, it's different in Canada because
it's scary.
It's so sparsely
still
populated.
It is, but at the same, it's weird how, you know, I don't know if it's being in the city almost, you know, my whole life, but yeah, when you go out to a place and it gets dark and you start walking, every sound out there, your mind could easily get wrapped up in what was that, what was that, what was that. So you got to go out there with a clear mind. And if you are going to be hiking at night, please go with someone.
Yep.
Like, please, like,
come
on.
And tell people where you're going.
100%, guys. A lot of these missing people, it is so easily avoidable.
We are definitely going to have to jump into Missing 411 on the next episode because
100%.
It's crazy. Some people in Singapore suggest that people could be mistaking a type of monkey called the crab-eating macaque. The biggest difference would be the size. So the macaques are about 38 to 55 centimeters, whereas the Bukit Timah monkey man is anywhere from 1 to 2 meters in height. So that's a dramatic difference. I feel like, you know, people will be able to tell whether it's a small monkey or a large ape man.
I'm sorry, I got lost at the fact that there might be a crab eating my cock.
Jumping into the next creature, we have the chuchunya, which is another large hominid from Russia. We're actually finding a few from that area. Chuchunya, it turns out, is an other name for Yeti. My goodness. Other names: abominable snowman, Métis, Migoi. I did not think we were going to jump into the Yeti that quickly, but
the Yeti is probably my all-time favorite. You gotta love the Yeti.
Are we talking about like the one that's going to kill us, or are we talking about the one that was in the claymation Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer?
Definitely talking about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. 100%.
It's like the Yeti and the Bigfoot of North America, they're commonly described as quite similar. The Yeti is a large bipedal ape-like creature covered in brown, gray, or white hair, sometimes depicted as having sharp teeth. Tibetan lore describes three main varieties of Yeti. The Nyalmo, which has black fur and is the largest and fiercest, standing around 15 feet tall. The Chuti, which stands around 8 feet tall and lives in the 8,000 to 10,000 feet above sea level range. And the Rangshim Bombo. Ooh, what is this we have here?
This is all about the Yeti.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, there was that, I'll have to look it up, but there was that other scientist, same thing. He was hiking all through those mountains, and they're wondering if the Yeti is actually a misidentified, what is that, Tibetan blue bear?
Oh, Tibetan blue bear?
Tibetan blue bear. As you can see, my knowledge for Bigfoot is strong. My reading ability is not. So, there we go.
Oh, the Tibetan blue bear actually looks kind of cute. Look at that big shaggy guy
And
right
see,
there.
that's what I was talking about before we went on air, and that's where I made the claim, I should let it be known publicly, that any photo from behind or any thermal imaging, unless I'm seeing long arms, I don't have any time in the day for it. There's way too many videos out there of something walking away from behind. And after seeing the way black bears can get on their hind legs and walk, and same thing with grizzly bears, I just don't have any time of day for that. And you even want to go with like the Kodiak, like the giant of a bear. That thing's standing up.
Yeah.
I don't have any time for it. Quick story, quick segue. On my way to Jasper one time, I was that typical tourist. There was a grizzly bear on the side of the road. Of course, I stopped my car to get out and take a photo of it.
How dare you?
Well, yeah, because we're in Jasper, right? Those ones are tamed. Like, you don't have to worry about those bears. Of course you do. Do not get out of your car.
Yeah.
I was an idiot. So I'm sitting there and I'm taking photographs, and a big trucker happened to come by, and he laid on his horn to warn me, like, dude, you're an idiot. And I look back, and this thing was standing on its hind legs. I'm not even kidding. It had to have been 8 or 9 feet tall. If I still have the photo up, I'll definitely send it to Gunner, and we could get it uploaded. But
Nice.
yeah, no, it was huge. And when I drove away, and I was like, that's got to be at least 80% of what people are seeing when it comes to Sasquatch. And I'm only saying that because a lot of people who are seeing it, they're not the people who are actually researching it. They're Joe Blows like myself, who go hiking for the first or second time. They see a bear, not realizing what it is, and next thing you know, you got everybody and their dog out there looking for Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So
With this whole Chuchunya entry as well, they also suggest it's some kind of Neanderthal-like man with furry forearms. I still don't know what the fascination is with describing all these giant creatures, this one they're saying is 6 to 7 feet tall, as Neanderthals. It is strange. But so this Yeti Chuchunya kind of range, it seems to go from Siberia all the way through to the Himalayas. We found a photograph from 1951 where an individual has their pickaxe, which is about a foot long, beside what appears to be a giant footprint, which is as long as the pickaxe, and it looks like twice as wide as an average man's foot.
is that your foot? It seems to be missing toes.
God damn it.
We keep it light here on ABC Radio.
Moving on, we've got the Fook monster, which has a bunch of different nicknames. The Jonesville monster, Southern Sasquatch, Boggy Creek monster, which was apparently found in Arkansas. Spelt Arkansas, still don't get why it's spelt like that.
Not to cut you off, but you guys want to watch a great movie, the Boggy Creek monster movie. It just named Boggy Creek. Or Boggy Creek, sorry. You need to give that one a watch. That one is so beautifully shot. They really use the feeling of suspense to get the story across. And yeah, I'm excited for you to dive into this one a little bit, because this one is one of the ones that keeps me intrigued as well.
So yeah, it was allegedly sighted in the early 1970s in Fook, Arkansas, where it was alleged to have attacked a local family. It has since become a part of Arkansas folklore. And the creature influenced the 1972 docudrama horror that you were just talking about, The Legend of Boggy Creek.
Great watch. 100% recommend that one.
I will throw that on my list. It's described as being, so there were various reports between 1971 and 1974, where they described the creature as a large bipedal creature covered in long dark hair, estimated to be about 7 feet tall and weighing 250 to 300 pounds. Later reports claimed it was far larger, with it being up to 10 feet or 3 meters tall and 800 pounds or 360 kilograms. It was running swiftly with a galloping gait and swinging its arms in a fashion similar to a monkey. It was described as having a terrible odor, the combination being described as a skunk and a wet dog.
Now, to piggyback off that, I remember you sent me a message. What was that bird you were saying that uses that defense mechanism where it smells really bad?
There is the Hoatzin, which is a bird which has a lot of veggies fermenting in its gut, so it always smells a bit stinky. That seems to be a common kind of thing with a lot of ape man sightings, is the stink. People describe Bigfoot as smelling like, hot garbage, skunk, wet dog.
Yeah, well, if you got all that long hair, and you got to think, right? You're catching salmon, you're ripping elk apart, you're constantly running. I'm not saying that these things produce like a body odor like how you and I do, but just the rotten flesh and the things that it's eating, you think would do something like that.
Have you ever been close to like a predator's den?
I'm going to go with no, but I never answered my emails. You mean wild predators?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, still no.
I was working at a previous job when I came across a coyote's den.
Interesting.
And just the smell of rotting meat, even in that area, was pretty overwhelming. So
they bring things back to their den to eat?
Sometimes, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Especially if they get something bigger, like a rabbit or something, they'll bring it home and save the leftovers. But
that makes sense.
That area smelled pretty funky. Now, picture something that is 10 times the size, eating probably 10 times the prey. Maybe it has 10 times the stink. I don't know.
And that reminds me, another quick segue. When we were actually out at the Dunster Delight there for my 30th birthday, on our way home, when we were on our way home there was a dead, I want to say elk, or maybe even just a white-tailed deer on the side of the road. And what I would describe as a smaller black bear grabbed this thing by the back of its neck and flung it over its shoulder as if it was Santa Claus and carried it away. So if a little black bear is going to be able to drag what I would consider a bigger sized whitetail, just imagine what a Sasquatch-like creature could pull in. Like we're talking about chimps and their strength. You got to think Bigfoot, definitely, if this thing's 500 or 600 pounds, even bigger, would you think it would be able to lift double its size? Like, would it be able to carry 700, 800, 900 pounds, no problem?
I could see that, because the descriptions generally describe this creature as ridiculously jacked.
And that's the thing with a man. Like, one of the things that, you could tell you're in great shape is you should be able to at least body press your own body weight. Like, you should be able to bench press your own body weight, I should say. And so I'm just, and if it's got hands, right? Like, it wraps that Michael-like thumb around the ankle or the antler, and it could just drag this animal. I'm just wondering, like, what strength capabilities a Sasquatch would have.
Like, what do they estimate? A full-grown gorilla is, 8 times as strong as the average man?
Yeah, which is scary when you consider that this thing is anywhere between 7 and 8 feet tall.
Yeah, it's terrifying. We move on to a monster with one of the most fun names, the Honey Island Swamp Monster.
My all-time favorite, baby.
Also known as Latiche, or the Tainted Kitri?
We're going with the Honey Island
Honey Island Swamp Monster. This thing is purported to inhabit the Honey Island Swamp in St. Tammany Parish, Louisiana. Now, I have not been down to the swamps of the southern United States. I would imagine they're difficult to travel around. You'd probably need a fan boat or something to get through all of that.
100%.
You'd have swamp, land, open water, mangroves. You'd have to get through all of that. So a creature that lived there would also have to be very adaptable. This thing is also described as being a large bipedal humanoid, about 7 feet tall, covered with gray hair, having yellow or red eyes, and there's that putrid odor again.
Well, you guys want another good watch, something, to just keep you busy or whatever. Swamp People on the Discovery Channel was a great show for that, where they would hunt gators. And if you want to look up on YouTube, I'll have to get the name for it, but there's that one really good video of a guy, he must be in a kayak or, like you said, some sort of fan boat, and he is filming something. Again, this is from behind, but the reason why I kind of like this one is you see the long arms reaching into the tree. It looks like it's grabbing grubs, insects, whatever it's eating at the time. And this man actually kind of gave a yell, and this thing stood up. And by the time it stood up, the guy's like, I'm out of here. Now, the reason why I'm prone to think that is real, Why would anyone in their right mind get in gator-infested waters just for like a 10-second viral YouTube video? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
They are from Louisiana, so maybe that's why there's not a lot to do. But no, those sort of things are what keeps me intrigued, and that's why I'm here today on ABC Radio, because of the possible question.
There were alleged plaster casts made of the Honey Island swamp monster footprints, and it only showed 4 toes on the cast, which is not a natural trait found in primates, because we have 5. Well, most of us have 5, not me.
And that's what's weird too. You know, that other footprint we were looking at, it to me it looked like it had 3 toes, like the one that you had popped up with the Yeti. And so that's another thing that gets me. It seems like different regions, these Sasquatch, I'll just loop them all in and consider them all Sasquatch for right now. They all have different toes. Like some of them have 5, some of them have 3, some of them have 4, and that's just so cool to me. That keeps me interested for sure, because in that way, like before we got on here talking about the different frogs, right, and what makes them different could just be like the tiniest blue dot on one compared to the other. And are these things like different species because of their feet and stuff like that? Like same difference with like a grizzly bear compared to a black bear. Like same sort of family, but different in their own special kind of ways based on what region they're from.
Yeah, as our understanding of human history grows, we're seeing a lot of things that used to be called pseudoscience becoming accepted reality. Like,
totally
20,
agree.
30 years ago, if you said, oh, Neanderthals mixed with humans, you'd be like, no, that's impossible. And now that's accepted. Even, I remember 15 years ago, we were talking about, Denisovans being part of the human lineage, and everyone's like, no. And now that's just accepted. Whoa. So who knows what other hominid species out there are part of our lineage? Who knows how many other hominid species out there lived alongside what we consider humans up until relatively recently.
And to touch base on that, on the opposite end of the spectrum, like correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't like hobbits just like recently discovered too, as like something like 20, 30 years ago? Yeah,
there were the Homo floresiensis from the island of Flores, I believe, in Indonesia.
Oh, okay.
And that was an island that was found with a lot of, they call it island dwarfism.
Okay.
So sometimes weird things happen when you're on an isolated island. So there's island dwarfism. So the humans were very small on that island. And there was also an extremely small species of elephant that lived on that island.
Interesting.
Like, I forget exactly how big they were, but, dwarf elephants. And then you go to other islands and you've got island gigantism. So also in Indonesia, that's where you have Komodo dragons, which are essentially monitor lizards that grow to, 200 pounds.
Komodo dragons, some of the most just majestic looking animal. I love Komodo dragons too. Definitely don't want to tickle one under its chin, but something really cool, something very cool. I could get behind the Komodo dragon, that's for sure.
Well, it just reminds you as well that sometimes truth is literally stranger than fiction, because if the Komodo dragon didn't exist and you told somebody, no, I saw a 200-pound lizard just eat an ox and it was not an alligator, they'd be like, you're making that up.
Now, what was that one we were talking about? Almasty?
Yeah.
And that one was on the smaller side too, so you got to think.
I think the Alma was big, but the Mongo was the 5'4" one.
Okay. So that just, they're finding bones. They're finding that hobbits and thing like that are real. Same with, Gigantopithecus.
We do have another small one actually right now. The next one on the list is the orang pendek, which is Indonesian for short person. So orang means person.
Yeah.
Like orangutan means man of the woods, basically. I really hope I got that definition right, because that's what I remember it as. But the orang pendek is the most common name given to a creature said to inhabit remote mountainous forests on the island of Sumatra. It has allegedly been seen and documented for at least 100 years by forest tribes, local villagers, Dutch colonists, and Western scientists and travelers. There is a fair amount of evidence behind the orang pendek.
Oh, yeah.
They believe it's a ground-dwelling bipedal primate covered in short fur, standing between 80 and 150 centimeters tall, so about up to 5 feet.
Definitely the definition of a knuckle dragger when you look at those arms, man.
Oh, yeah.
Those arms are right by its ankles. Like I know you guys can't see this, but the arm length on this creature literally well past its knees. And if you stand up now and you drape your arms down, you know, if yours go way past your knees, you might want to go see a doctor. You might have a little bit more than that 3% Neanderthal in your DNA.
Man, become a boxer if you have range like that.
Oh, for sure. Become a boxer or, double as a clothes hanger.
The orang pendek has been said to dwell in the landscapes of Sumatra and Indonesia and other parts of Southeast Asia. It has been documented for quite a long time. Dutch colonists in the early 20th century, they were said to have seen it. One man, Mr. Van Heerwaarden, I apologize, my Dutch is probably not great. He described an encounter he had while surveying land in 1923. I can't even do a Dutch accent. I'm not even going to try. I discovered
it's cold! That's the best I can do.
I discovered a dark and hairy creature on a branch. The Sadapa, I'm not sure what that means, was also hairy on the front of its body. The color there was a little lighter than on the back. The very dark hair on its head fell to just below the shoulder blades, or even almost to the waist. Had it been standing, its arms would have reached to a little above its knees. They were therefore long, but its legs seemed to me rather short. I did not see its feet, but I did see some toes, which were shaped in a very normal manner. There was nothing repulsive or ugly about its face, nor was it at all ape-like. That is
how I'm described on dating sites.
not too ape-like. It is interesting as well, though, that, like a lot of people that wouldn't really benefit from saying they saw it have all claimed to see it. This is one of those creatures which is so common in the folklore, but still is being attested to by other people.
I would love to see a group of them get together and do the YMCA, that's for sure.
Next we've got the Ntewo or Ntevo, which are said to be a small tribe of small Bigfoot or Yeti-like hominids native to Sri Lanka. Now, this is another weird one. Sri Lanka is not a very large area.
No.
And there are a lot of people in Sri Lanka. You would think that they would have had some kind of really compelling evidence by now, because let's see. Sri Lanka, let's see the population there. 22 million people.
Beautiful place. Coastal.
Oh yeah, used to be referred to as Ceylon. Let's see, majority Buddhist.
Now, a theory while you're looking this up that I just thought of, right? Like the tidal waves come in, and a lot of time, fish and other octopus, anything, you name it, they get left in those tidal pools. Now, if you are a Sasquatch-like creature, you got to think they take advantage of stuff like that too, because we do that.
Yep.
So there's another way that it could be getting its protein. Just an idea.
But what gets me about this creature is that the population density in Sri Lanka, 337.7 people per kilometer squared.
Yeah.
Now, even if it was a poorer, less developed country, you think 337 people every square kilometer would not be getting constant footage of the Ntewo? This thing's described as being between 3 to 4 feet tall. The females are even shorter. They're covered in reddish hair, and they have short, powerful arms with short, long-clawed hands. They walk upright always. They have no tails. They live in small parties, sleep in caves, or in leaf nests of their own design, and they have a varied diet, which includes squirrels, deer, even crocodiles.
Wow.
They don't use tools. They use their long claws to disembowel their prey. It sounds like they have their own language, some sort of burbling or birds twittering. This is one of those creatures that I would say sounds cool, bro,
Yeah.
Not really buying it.
Well, just the fact, and you know, like I have a theory too that Sasquatch, and when I say Sasquatch, right, I'll say Bigfoot. I'm talking North America right now. Apparently, like they live in smaller communities as well. But when you touch base on this one, like if they're living in communities and you're talking about the population there, it's not just one hiding on its own, so it's harder to be spotted. If they're in big groups like that, they're talking, they're chirping, they're making their animal noise, they're growling or whatever. It's like you said, it sounds really cool, but it sounds really made up.
I mean, like again, just with that population density, we would be overwhelmed. They have phones, they have internet in Sri Lanka. Like we would have seen so much stuff by now.
Well, it's the equivalent of living in an apartment building where there's a lot of times you might not see any of your neighbors, but eventually you're gonna see them. Like you're in a giant spot populated by people. You know, at least 1 out of the 10 times you're probably gonna run into somebody.
Especially if they had a large enough population to sustain
their
population,
totally
population.
Totally agree.
Next, we've got one of my personal favorites, just because it's so silly: the Florida skunk ape.
Gotta love them.
Woo! Let's go, Stinky. So this thing, as you can guess, lives in Florida and other parts of the southeastern United States. It's sometimes referred to as a cousin of Bigfoot. There are a lot of dubious articles trying to prove the skunk ape's existence. There are anecdotal sightings. There are blurry photographs. It sounds like it's a combination of folklore and hoaxes. It's described as a bipedal human or ape-like creature, approximately 5 to 7 feet tall, or 1.5 to 2.1 meters tall. It's covered in reddish-brown hair. And as you can tell from the name, and with many other ape men, this one has a foul odor similar to a skunk.
Doesn't smell good. Now to touch base quickly, I know the Florida skunk ape really got popping when there was that lady who never came forward, but she sent a photograph to the local news station of what looked like a giant orangutan in her backyard. Now, I do know that I saw that. She heard something in her backyard and then, of course, like took a photograph, and that's what she saw. And that's exactly it right there, hiding behind the shrubs that we are looking at right now.
Yeah, for anyone that's looking it up, just look up Florida skunk ape. You'll see what appears to be an orangutan hiding behind some kind of like fan palms. And this one, okay, now, if we're going to touch on this, we got a YouTube video.
There's a YouTube video here. Now, this gentleman, I could be mistaken. There's also the Minnesota grassman, or the Florida grassman, I should say. This guy had... his life's work was basically, imagine a lifeguard chair or a tennis commissioner / referee sitting in one of those giant chairs that are probably about 7 to 8 feet in, like height wise, and he sat there for days, months, years on end, and he got probably the grainiest footage you'll ever see in your life of this giant thing running through the field. And what makes this even cooler is the fact that there was multiple witnesses to this. Like a lot of people actually stopped and filmed it, and there were some 911 calls that were made. A mother and a son that reported the skunk ape itself as well. So that's something to think about. Food for thought, man.
This is one I'm willing to speculate on a little bit, because think of how many
Everglades, man.
Well, think of how many invasive species just thrive there. We've got the Burmese pythons that moved in there. Now they're everywhere.
Alligator gar, the fish.
Yeah,
like there's
people
all sorts of things.
People releasing pet chimps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't got time for that.
Yeah, they could survive there. They could survive. And that picture was one of the least blurry, highest quality photos we've seen. But it also looked just like an orangutan. Could somebody have released a pet? Probably, because Florida has insane, I don't know if they still do, but a lot of the United States has insane exotic pet laws.
And you got to think too, like us, we're very social creatures. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're a lone chimp and you're just kind of tossed to the wayside, your whole life is turned upside down. So your personality, all those traits that you normally have, like those would kind of go out the window, and you would just be pretty well on autopilot when it comes to whatever you can do to survive. That's my opinion on it anyway.
It would probably be traumatic.
Very traumatic.
Completely separated from your tribe.
Yeah.
Cast out into a strange new area, and there's no one that looks like you, speaks like you, understands you. All you can do is just find food and hide.
100%, right? And if you, like you said, if you were a pet or you're something from the zoo that broke out, and you're not going up to people like you're a little kitten coming out of the woods. Like, you would be afraid. I'd be afraid.
Yeah.
You hear about that all the time. You know, like, I know this isn't Bigfoot, but people escaping from being held captive, and they run into a group of people and they're almost afraid to go ask for help just because they're so traumatized that any person they run into after that, they just think that they're in on it.
Yeah.
And they're going to be returned to their ungodly-like conditions that they were in prior to escaping. So, yeah, that's it. It really, really tortures the mind, things like that.
There are a couple of proposed explanations. The most, I would say, plausible is that there's a Florida black bear that suffers from mange, and people misidentify it. Like we touched on earlier, bears, especially when they're like suffering from disease or something, they can look a little strange, and if they're walking around upright, that can be a little confusing. The United States National Park Service officially considers the skunk ape to be a hoax.
No, see, and I agree with that. And you were talking about like the Florida black bear with mange. I can't find it right now, but I do know that there is a photo out there that people are claiming is a Sasquatch, and it almost looks like it's bent over like how you would when you're tying your shoes. I can't remember where it was, if it was taken in Florida or if it was taken in Minnesota. But yeah, looking at photos of bears with mange right now, yeah, it's some scary stuff. It's wild. Sorry, I don't mean to stutter. It just taken my words away from me. It's just wild to me how human-like that turns into. It's
sad, and it's also confusing, because I consider myself fairly well-versed in the outdoors world, but, you know, when you're expecting to see a certain thing and it comes out looking completely different, like, you know, a hairless cat, if it's your first time seeing a hairless cat, you're like, what is this? Same with those hairless dogs.
Coyotes.
Same with hairless bears and coyotes. Like in Edmonton, the amount of people that misidentify coyotes with mange, it's... Well, I mean, I shouldn't say it's surprising, not anymore. But, yeah, it is jarring. It's off-putting. Next, we've got the Yeren, which is China's possible hominid cryptid. It's alleged to inhabit remote mountainous forests of China, most famously in the Shenangjia Forestry District in Hubei Province. Sightings of the hairy man have remained constant since the Warring States period, circa 340 BC. So this might be the farthest back the records of ape men go. I know that for Bigfoot and Sasquatch in North America, there's the very old oral tradition. Oh, I am looking at a picture of something that does look a lot like a mangy black bear as well. I do see the resemblance.
And this was taken in 2007 by a game trail camera by a hunter, like I said, 2007, Pennsylvania. And it was thought to be a Sasquatch bending over to pick something up. But when you do look at a black bear with mange, it is uncanny how similar they look.
That's crazy.
Even the hump on the back, like it's got that bear-like hump. So
that big muscle hump.
Yeah. So that right there. And that's why I'm saying, like, if you show me a photo from behind or a video from behind, unless I see arms reaching way up there and you know, pulling grubs and stuff like that, not knocking a branch down, I mean physically wrapping a hand around it and breaking it.
Yeah.
I don't have time for those.
I want to see thumbs and a face.
100%.
But yeah, going back to this Yeren, there's a specific Yeren cave in Shenangjia, which appears to be bit of a tourist attraction. there were some pseudoscientific studies done into Bigfoot and Yeti, but when the Maoists took over China, they really wanted to leave behind legends and folklore, so they stopped researching and talking about the Yeren. Afterwards, there were large expeditions launched by the Chinese Academy of Sciences to investigate the eyewitness accounts, footprints, hairs, and bodies. They referred to it as Yeren fever, and there was a lot of reliance on citizen science, which wasn't really popular in China at the time. There's a lot of speculation that this could have been some kind of Gigantopithecus or something I hadn't heard of before, the Paranthropus robustus, a species of robust Australopithecine from the early to middle Pleistocene. For anyone that's not familiar with what the term robust means for anthropology, forms are generally referred to as robust or gracile. Robust would be thick, strong, heavy-set, powerful, like a bear.
Okay.
Whereas gracile would be thin, more delicate, designed more for speed, like a fox.
Yeah.
Like a fox is designed to, avoid the danger if it's there. It's not a brawler. It's not a tank like a badger. So this would be a more robust humanoid. So yeah, this is probably, like I said, the furthest back written records go for any kind of ape man. I know that First Nations, indigenous folklore, the oral tradition goes back very long. We just don't know exactly when the oral tradition would have started. But the Yeren, it is interesting. Well, I guess it makes sense. A lot of the ape men that are described are in the hard-to-reach mountainous locations.
Yeah, and that's in every legend. They're all out there. Or, like you said, if it's not mountain terrain, it's the swamps. Like, they are in areas where people shouldn't be. So
yeah, the most sparsely populated areas. The Yeren's described as another upright walking bipedal hominid, stands over 6 feet or 2 meters tall. It's covered in tawny hair all over the body, especially long at the scalp, and has a face reminiscent of both an ape and a human. Some other descriptions feature it with black or red hair, distended eyes, long arms hanging all the way down to the knees, and big feet. The Yeren supposedly laughs when coming across a human. Now, I don't know if this is like a laugh the way I would laugh if a friend told a joke, or if the laugh is their way of communicating, but there's no joy behind it. Maybe that's just like a laughing kookaburra, just making noise to communicate.
Could simply be, like you're saying, like a vocalization. Not necessarily a laugh, but what is described as a laugh.
During all of these studies on the Yeren, there were other research groups that were sent out featuring military personnel, zoologists, biologists, photographers. Some people speculate that this group was actually too big and generated too much noise, so they weren't going to find what they were looking for. Maybe that's why a lot of the finders, it's just like a solo person or two people together in the woods. It's not often that a big group of campers have an 8-man walk right through the middle of their campfire.
Well, aside from Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin there, where they actually set out to look for Sasquatch, most of the reported sightings are exactly like you said. You just happen to be on a hike, you happen to be camping with, a small group of friends, and they more so come to you because they're curious as to what's happening in that area. It's not just, there's no proven method on, hey, like, let's go out and find this thing. So
it is weird, but unfortunately all the expeditions failed to turn up any convincing evidence, so scientific interest plummeted.
Oh, yeah.
When you have limited research funding, how much of it are you going to spend chasing down literal folktales?
And to touch on that too, you kind of, like, there's a lot of doctors and scientists out there that don't want to approach this subject because if they do, and it's proven, like you said, to just be fairy tales and stuff like that, like, you literally just spent your whole life's work to be made a laughing stock. So sometimes it's better to sit on the fence and not get involved. And one thing I want to touch on real quick is there's not, like, probably one of the most toxic communities out there would be the Bigfoot community. And the reason I say that is just simply put, nobody out there, like, believes when somebody else sees something. And it's almost like back in the day, like a lot of these serial killers got away with things because departments didn't want to share what they actually had. They all wanted to be the person to discover the killer for themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's like Bigfoot. Todd Standing would be a perfect example of that. Fuck off.
We did already touch on the Yeti, so now we come to the last ape man on our list, the Yowie.
Whoa! Let's go to Australia, mate!
Mate!
Sorry.
It's a large and hairy, human-like entity. This one is a weird one. There are a lot of different descriptions for what it could be. In other parts of Australia, it's referred to as a quinkin or a jugabina.
We'll go with Yowie.
Or a Gindering, Jurawara, Mingoin, Putakan, Dulaga, Gulaga, Thulagal, Yahweh, Nukuna, Wawi, Pankarlangu, Jimbra, Tajangar. Australians are just having fun with it at this point.
I don't know what you just said, but things are literally floating in the kitchen right now.
I cast some kind of weird spell.
What is going on?
This one, again, described as bipedal, hairy, and ape-like, standing upright between 6'11" and 12 feet tall.
And here's the bigger ones you're talking about, right? Like
Insanely
the 12 feet.
Big. The Yowie's feet are described as much larger than humans, but alleged Lowie tracks are inconsistent in shape and toe number. That doesn't make sense.
No, and that's another thing like you were saying. And like we haven't spoke on the terrain yet, but man, the outback you gotta think would be a hard place to survive if you're 12 feet. Like, not to sound dumb, they have to have them. Like, how big are the bears out in Australia?
I don't think there are any bears in Australia.
Yeah, see, so man, what are these things chomping on here?
Whatever large mammals Australia used to have would have been hunted down a long time ago by the Australian Aborigines.
Yeah.
Because the way they used to hunt is they would set grass fires, and they would literally just burn everything and then go grab all the corpses after.
Jesus,
So
man.
that's unfortunately why there are no large megafauna left in Australia. They were wiped out thousands of years ago. So for something like this
Talk
to somehow...
about smoking your meats.
Well, that's exactly it. Like, you get your food already cooked. It's crazy.
Smart.
There are actually birds that do that as well. They'll find, like, areas that have been struck by lightning, and they'll take the burning twigs and drop them in grass.
That's crazy.
I know, man. If you don't believe me, look up, oh, God, what was the search term? Like, Australia fire bird, you will find the video of birds dropping, like, burning sticks to start grass fires.
That's crazy, man.
I don't like the fact that the Yowie's descriptions are so inconsistent. You can't even be consistent on the number of toes or the shape of the feet.
Well, they couldn't even figure out what to name them. You just listed 20 names there, man.
Oh, it is a weird one. So going down, some people believe that this started with the old Australian Aborigines. They have their concept of the dream time, which is like I don't even know the best way to describe it. It's almost like...
What would they eat? There was that, like, not a cocoa leaf, but I know that the Aboriginals, and this is same here in North America, where they would take, like, a hallucinogen, and they would be let loose in the outback, and you got it, like, almost like a spirit animal type thing.
I don't know what hallucinogens grow naturally in Australia, but the dream time does seem to be like the Australian other world, but you don't necessarily need to die to access it. You can see it every time you sleep, or if you hallucinate, if you go on a vision quest, something like that.
So in like a weird way, it's up there, kind of like with sleep paralysis.
I would say more like astral projection almost.
Okay.
Like they can visualize things that aren't quite there, or at least they don't exist in our plane of reality.
Okay.
For anyone that has a better understanding of Australian shamanism, reach out to me. I would love to have you on the show. But the Yowie was described as a type of indigenous ape. Some people believe that it's about 5 feet tall, tailless, covered in very long black hair with kind of a dirty red or snuff color around the throat or breast. I can't picture something like this really being alive, though. In 2010, a Canberra man said he saw a person described as a juvenile coated in hair with long arms trying to steal a car in his garage. That sounds a little off. There were sightings in New South Wales in 77, 94, 96, 2000, 2011, 2012, and 2013. We have recordings of the Yowie. We have people who say they filmed the creature. We have bushwalkers who say they caught it on videotape. We're actually just going to take a quick moment to see if we can look up the Piper film where they say they can find... Apparently someone says they viewed the Yowie. If we can find this...
And unfortunately, like, people bring that up too, just to touch base on why you look for that. They say with technology nowadays that, it should be easily filmed. But the problem with that is it seems like the more detailed the films get, the more people are, that's fake. As if everyone out there filming these things has a budget like the Marvel movie franchise.
Well, again, we have the Todd Standing footage where there's the clear footage of a face, but there are only like 5 seconds of footage available. And that's where a lot of the criticism comes from.
And the whole thing with Todd Standing, too, is there's a lot of people out there that believe he actually did see something, wasn't able to film it, so he tried to film a reenactment of it. So that there, too. I do know that he's got 2 or 3 videos, and he uses the same excuse on all of them. Well, I was out of battery. Like, come on, man.
For anyone who hasn't watched it, I would recommend the movie Discovering Bigfoot because even though I groaned just like that a lot during the film, it was entertaining.
It was very entertaining. Just some of the stuff was almost like overly done. Like some of the things that he was claiming, like there's the flare video out there if you guys want to go out and watch the flare video. I'm not going to repeat what it sounded like, but to me it's either like a man who is deeply afraid for losing his life, or it's just some guy in his backyard lighting flares and freaking out and screaming. So
yeah, 3 seconds of infrared footage. All right, we've got the Piper footage. Let's
take
check
a look
this
at
out.
this, guys.
Too dark to be a kangaroo.
Oh, shit.
All right, there's definitely something walking in the distance. It's
bipedal.
Dark, bipedal.
Looking at this right now reminds me a lot of the Paul Friedman footage and also a lot of the Patty footage. Like, it almost like doing the exact same walk.
Man, however much I want to criticize the footage, I mean, like, say what you will, I would say this is a little inconclusive.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can't really blame the guy that was filming it because even with my modern camera, night filming is kind of hard.
Oh, it's very hard.
It would be about the same quality.
No, extremely hard. And that's what's out there too. Like, people say, oh, get closer, get closer. What you don't realize is even with predators, their first natural instinct when they run into people is to get away. Like, they're not, unless, they're starving or they're a polar bear, they're not equipped to just be like, okay, here we go, we're going at it. From anything right down to, a grizzly bear to a rattlesnake. You come across a rattlesnake, you wake it up, it rattles and it skedaddles. like it gets out of there. And this is the same with a grizzly bear. Most times, if you're with people, you stand up unless it's hungry. It's going to look to walk the other way. And I don't see why Sasquatch wouldn't do the same thing unless you are, like I said, hungry. And we'll get into it. Like, we already touched base on some of the missing 411 stuff that we will touch base on. Like, is Bigfoot like that opportunistic? Is it hunting people? Who knows?
And to round out the episode, we're going to talk about some of the different theories as to where all of these 8 men stories came from. Hey, Chase, are you ready to drop a truth bomb?
I'm ready to drop a truth bomb.
We have theory number 1. Bigfoot is a leftover Gigantopithecus which has somehow evaded detection during human colonization of the globe. Now, when I say evaded detection, that's insofar as a lack of compelling photographic evidence. There are oral traditions of ape men all over the world for millennia. Like we saw, the ones in China, they started writing it down in 340 BC that they were having their Yeren, those ape men out there. But how did they first find the Gigantopithecus? Now, this story's a little wild, but what happened was there was, I believe he was an English explorer, or some kind of European explorer, was in an apothecary, like an early pharmacy in China, and he found a tooth that was an ape tooth, but not an ape tooth he recognized. So he took this tooth, ran it through the whole, old database of primate teeth, didn't realize it was anything that we knew of, and purported that it belonged to a different species. This different species was described as a giant hominid. Not really human-like, but again, 9-ish feet tall. Looking into the actual article for the Gigantopithecus, it is described as an extinct genus of ape that lived in southern China from 2 million to approximately 200,000 years ago. Again, up for dispute based on whether you believe that this tooth was a more recent find.
Well, not only that, you got to think, just because, that one was proven to be from that time doesn't necessarily mean that there weren't more from times going forward. Like, an example, if someone were to discuss, you think when we're all gone, if somebody digs up someone from, the 1900s, until they find more of us, they're going to assume that we only lived in the 1900s.
Well, exactly. They speculate this thing died out 200,000 years ago. If I found human bones from 200,000 years ago, that wouldn't disprove that we're here today.
And you're saying this was Southeast Asia?
So the
Vietnam.
The molar teeth were found in a drugstore by Ralph von Koenigswald in 1935.
Only to prove that you can find anything at your local drugstore.
Support local. In 1956, the first mandible and more than 1,000 teeth were found in Liucheng. Only teeth and 4 mandibles are known currently, and other skeletal elements were likely consumed by porcupines before they could fossilize.
Interesting.
Have you ever been walking through the woods and found bones that look like they were gnawed on by other animals?
I can't say that I have, but I do remember a time in Elk Island years ago with you when we were driving at night through the park. And you remember the size of that porcupine that was walking on the side of the road that had coyotes beside it, that would not get close? Porcupines out there, the ones in Elk, that thing was huge. I didn't know they ate bones though. That's pretty cool.
I believe porcupine teeth grow throughout their entire life as well.
Interesting.
Yep, they're in the rodent family.
Okay, that was my next question.
Yeah, as far as I know, rodent teeth keep growing for their whole lives.
Yeah, they do.
So they chew on the bones, which helps wear down their teeth and also gives them a nice source of calcium in their diet because they can't go to their local drugstore and just get some supplementation. The Gigantopithecus, they believe, could have been 440 to 660 pounds, which is kind of in the range of what Bigfoot gets described as. They believe it might have been sexually dimorphic, so like a lot of other apes out there, the males would have been much bigger than the females.
Use that to your advantage.
And they would have had, big... they would have had a lot of variation in their teeth, similar to us. So the big molars to crush all the things in the back of their teeth. It sounds like the incisors were reduced and the canines would have functioned a bit more like premolars.
Okay.
So, on this description of the Gigantopithecus, this thing would have been an herbivore. But again...
Straight up, the old veganism.
Hey, it works for them.
Hey, 100%.
Gigantopithecus is closely related to the orangutans.
Now, not to cut you off, but when these things lived, when they say that they were around, is this still when Earth was all connected, like the world was all connected, or was the Earth like our map as we know it at this time?
Let's see, 2 million years ago.
Because I'm just wondering, like, there's no, unless you go to your zoo, there's no apes, there's no primates except for us in North America. So I'm just wondering how would it get here unless it's its own species again. You know, we go back to the foot anatomy and the missing toes in certain ones depending on what region you're in.
All right, we have found a map on the Smithsonian website.
And that looks shows, all connected.
Let's see, what did Earth look like 94 million years ago? Let's do this. Oh, no, we want 200 million years. No, 2 million years ago. We don't even have that option. 20 million years ago, the plate tectonics looks about similar to what it was now. 2 million years ago, we could also assume it would have looked very similar. So, yeah. 20 million years ago, which is the farthest back this map will let us look, things look pretty similar. The Caribbean's a little different. Water levels are a bit higher. Brazil, there's a bit of an inland sea there, which is where the Amazon rainforest is now. North America looks pretty much the same as it is now. No ice sheets on there.
Personally, I don't believe this map because it's round.
Oh, God. No, we can't have... No.
I'm just kidding, guys.
We cannot bring in the flat earth crowd to this episode.
I'm just kidding.
All right.
Members all around the globe.
Our next theory, Bigfoot is an other unknown higher primate. This is not completely unbelievable because we keep discovering new hominids like the Homo denisovans. As our knowledge of human history keeps changing, we're realizing that first we thought that humans were just Homo sapiens, then we realized that Europeans have a bit of Homo neanderthalensis DNA mixed in.
A lot.
Then they started realizing that a lot of people in Asia have Homo denisovans DNA mixed in.
Am I ever glad to have you here to say the big words? I just want to get that out of the way right now.
Getting my money's worth out of that $26,000 degree.
Wow.
But yeah, so we're realizing now that even humanity's lineage is a lot messier than we were initially led to believe. So who's to say that there aren't other lineages of, Homo blankensis still roaming around nowadays?
I don't know if you could say that. Just a quick segue, you're bringing up like how animals are discovered and things like that. You look at the panda bear, how the panda bear was discovered, and people in a village are explaining like, no, I'm seeing this black and white bear that climbs trees and only eats bamboo. And the panda bear is, I think it's safe to say, it's described as one of the dumbest animals out there.
Don't know how it survives.
One of the dumbest animals out there. The fact that they sometimes in captivity, they almost have to be forced to breed. But that's what gets me. That's what gets my mind wandering. Is you think of something so dumb, so stupid, so large that took so long to be proven as a real thing.
Yes.
So.
There is still enough of the world that is barely explored that I could believe it.
For sure.
In an earlier episode of the podcast that I called The Birds and the Bees, I did some stories about birds and bees. And one of the stories, they rediscovered a species of bird in New Guinea that had been believed to be extinct.
Yeah.
Because New Guinea is so hard to travel around. It's incredibly mountainous. It's very sparsely populated. It's
even fish.
Very, very low infrastructure. If you want to get anywhere, you're walking, basically.
I'm walking away.
There are some theories that Bigfoot was a super predator that hunted humans. Again, this isn't totally unbelievable because there are omnivorous apes, there are herbivorous apes. We know chimpanzees have hunted down and eaten other apes.
Oh, yeah.
Humans, where... hominids too. We've hunted down and eaten other apes until we realized all the diseases and stuff. But bushmeat is still a thing.
Oh, I totally agree with that. And that's something that probably one of the upcoming episodes that I'm most looking forward to is the missing 411 theories. Just to quickly touch on that, the 2% rule, and that being that 2% of the world is absolutely evil. And what I mean by that, that's where you get your serial killers, your arsonists, your, not to go into the dark side of things, but also Sasquatch and animals could be like that. Your great white sharks that just eat people to eat people. And is Bigfoot like that as well? Supposedly a community-driven animal. Some of these Bigfoot are chased out of their communal groups. And you got to think, if you're by yourself, you know, does a little kid, does a hiker on their own present the opportunity for an easy meal?
Now, the final theory I want to bring up is also my least favorite theory.
Oh, God, I already know what you're going to say.
Yep. It's one that makes us both scream, fuck off. Sorry, Mom. Bigfoot is an ethereal being in the quantum realm. Now, I wish I was making this one up.
Ant-Man. Michael Douglas loves this theory.
It's my least favorite.
So you know it's the one that's gonna be the one.
That's gonna be, oh God, so there are people who believe that Bigfoot can essentially jump realities. Now, there, like, for people that have a bit of an understanding of physics and stuff, it's speculated that there are different layers of reality. That's also a big thing in a lot of mystical traditions. You know, you raise your vibrations or you lower your vibrations, you enter a different plane of existence. There are people who genuinely believe that Bigfoot and other cryptids somehow know how to innately do this. That would explain why all the photos are blurry. That would explain why we've never found a body. There's even a book for sale called Quantum Bigfoot about this exact idea. Found that on Amazon. The most annoying thing is that this theory is currently impossible to prove or disprove.
I just don't think it's in the realm of possibility.
That's the thing.
It's so far-fetched to me.
We cannot prove or disprove it, which is the most annoying part about this theory.
And I feel like that's why some people do have that theory. Because, you know, if you can't explain it, go with something, like, unexplainable. So, I don't know if any of our listeners out there, I'm hoping a lot of you have seen those Predator movies. And I don't mean the one with Danny Glover. Or, who is that? The weird looking guy that played Buddy Holly, Gary Busey. Sorry, wow. But that's a theory out there too, that they could kind of turn invisible for seconds or periods at a time.
So crazy.
It is. It's crazy to me because if there's no other animal out there right now that does that, how can you disprove it? It's like, you know, I see my mom and dad put the Christmas presents under the tree when I'm 6 or 7 years old, but you can't disprove that Santa Claus isn't a thing. Like, to me, it's just, it's wild. And I know, and we're Alberta's Bigfoot channel, but that to me is you're getting into the alien aspect of it. And I don't want to, that's a yellow brick road I don't want to skip down.
I would say we're kind of like Bigfoot agnostics. Like, I want to believe, but I can't yet.
100%. And I feel like that's the side of the fence you need to be on. You know, you have a guy like Todd Standing where he'll step or hear one of his colleagues step on a branch or a twig and there's a crack and he's making everybody stop because that was Bigfoot. And we brought up Discovering Bigfoot. One of the dumbest scenes is where he brings out like an almost deaf scientist, Humbernickel, I believe his name was, and he couldn't hear anything, and they kept saying, oh no, like, just listen, and then of course, that's the closest the Bigfoots ever got to their trailer, just close enough so he could hear them. And that's the sort of stuff where and why the Bigfoot community is so highly disrespected.
But discovering Bigfoot is so worth the watch. Though.
It's worth the watch.
I'm still gonna say watch it. It's very entertaining.
Make your partner watch it with you.
Oh, I did that.
Same. She still married me, so I did something right.
One other thing I wanted to touch on, I did ask for questions from my friends and family, and the only question I got is one that I've also personally experienced.
It was more of a statement.
It was more of a statement, but my friend was like, I think that wood knocking is more just other guys out there wood knocking and then thinking that Bigfoot is wood knocking back, but it's other guys trying to communicate with Bigfoot.
And I could get behind that because a lot of these researchers, right? Like you park your car and you walk into this hot spot, which is like an hour or two away. I'm sorry, but you probably need to do a good 3, 4, even 5-day hike, something that I will 100% admit that I am not in shape for right now.
Yep.
But there's a lot of guys out there like me who aren't in shape that are going out there and getting these things on video, getting them on audio. And to me, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, as the person who has gone out and wood knocked before in the past, I wonder if I have been the cause of a couple sightings in Nordegg.
Oh, 100%. I could get behind that.
I swear I heard it, bro.
I could get behind that.
All right, folks. On the next episode of ABC Radio, Alberta's Bigfoot channel, we'll discuss the most compelling evidence, the most chilling encounters, and the links between North America's cave systems, missing persons reports, and ape men. Chase, any closing comments?
You know, I just want to close with, I recently started a live podcast with my friend Ryan Bankston, the Wrestling with Bigfoot podcast. We are on Facebook. We touch on a lot of sports, a lot of wrestling, and I, of course, try to dictate the conversation and get Sasquatch in there. Not as in-depth as what we're doing right now, but if you can go give that page a like and a follow, that would be greatly appreciated.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. See you next time.
Feelings were sore. Like,
ABC